In the stillness before the world's wounding, when the stars yet sang their first lament, a question stirred in the hearts of those who walked beneath the heavens. What does it mean to hold a light not wrought by your own hands, to cradle a flame kindled by powers beyond the veil, to guard it against the wind's betrayal, to shield it from the shadow that creeps ever near? This is no fleeting riddle, no query to be brushed aside with the turning of a leaf. It is a wound that bleeds a whisper, that haunts a truth that burns like embers in the soul. In the tale of Númenor, that star-crowned isle of men, we hear its echo, a song woven of glory and grief, of faith and folly, of a people who bore a sacred light and let it slip through trembling fingers. Let us begin where all sacred tales take root, in the dawn when the world was young and the heart unscarred. Númenor was no mere land, no kingdom hewn from stone and ambition. It was a gift, a star risen from the sea's embrace, granted by the valor, the powers of the West, to the Edain, those men who stood unyielding against Morgoth's shadow in the First Age. When the fires of that ancient war had faded, when the earth groaned and the seas roared with the wrath of Ilúvatar, the Valar lifted a new land from the deeps. They named it Andor, the land of gift, but men called it Númenor, the westerness, a beacon of hope in a world still raw with sorrow. Picture it now as the elves might sing in their halls of starlight, an isle of emerald hills and silver shores, where rivers wove threads of crystal, and the air carried the scent of blossoms unknown to mortal lands. At its heart stood Armenelos, the city of kings, its towers gleaming like the first breath of dawn. Above the city, the white tree Nimloth spread its boughs, a living echo of Telperion, the silver tree of Valinor, whose light had once bathed the world in sanctity. The men of Númenor, the Dunedain, were not as other men. They were tall, their eyes bright with the wisdom of the Eldar, their lives stretched long by the grace of the Valar. They sailed the seas not as conquerors but as seekers, their ships gliding beneath the stars to lands uncharted. They built halls that seemed to sing, forged blades that gleamed like moonlight, and wove tales that carried the weight of eternity. Yet even in this dawn there was a silence, a stillness beneath the song. For what is a gift if its meaning is not held close? What is a light if its source is forgotten? The Númenorians were blessed, but they were men, and the heart of man is a restless tide, ever turning toward what lies beyond its reach. The Valar had given them a land of peace, but they had not given them the undying life of the elves. In that difference, small at first like a crack in a mighty stone, lay the seed of all that would come. Let us walk then through the golden years of Númenor, not as chroniclers but as pilgrims seeking the truth of the soul's journey. The early kings descended from Elros were wise, their hearts attuned to the music of Ilúvatar. Elros, the first king, was half-elven brother to Elrond of Rivendell, and he chose the fate of men not out of fear, but out of a deep and unspoken faith in the mystery of mortality. His reign was a time of building, of learning, of kinship with the elves who sailed from Tol Eressëa. The Númenorians studied the lore of the stars, the secrets of the sea, the crafting of things both fair and mighty. They were not yet proud, not yet shadowed. They were a people who looked upward to the heavens and westward to the undying lands with reverence, not envy. But reverence is a fragile flame, easily dimmed by the weight of years. As centuries passed, the Númenorians grew mighty. Their ships roamed farther, their cities shone brighter, their knowledge deepened. They were no longer pupils of the elves, but peers. And in their hearts some began to murmur, "Are we not equal to the Eldar? Are we not worthy of more?" The light of Númenor, once a gift to be cherished, became a possession to be measured. And in that shift, subtle as the turning of a tide, the first shadow fell. Consider now the white tree Nimloth, standing silent in the courts of Armenelos. It was a symbol of the bond between Númenor and Valinor, its silver leaves catching the light of dawn and dusk. But a tree does not speak. It does not plead for its own sanctity. It simply is, and in its silence it asks those who stand beneath it to remember. The Númenorians in their early days would gather beneath Nimloth to offer thanks to Eru, the one whose will had shaped the world. They sang hymns not of their own glory, but of the glory that had been given. Yet as their power grew, the songs changed. The hymns became anthems, the offerings became rituals, and the silence of Nimloth grew heavier, as if the tree itself could sense the coming storm. What is it then to hold a light not wrought by your own hands? It is to be a steward, not a master. It is to know that the flame you carry was kindled by another, and that your task is not to claim it, but to bear it faithfully. The Númenorians in their golden age understood this, if only in part. But the heart of man is not content to stand still. It seeks, it strives, it hungers. And in that hunger there is both beauty and peril. For what is hunger, if not the echo of a deeper longing, a longing for eternity, for meaning, for a place beyond the circles of the world? Let us linger here in the twilight of Númenor's glory to ponder this longing. The Númenorians were not alone in their restlessness. Is it not the lot of all who walk the earth to feel the ache of what cannot be held, to know that life is fleeting, that the body will fade, that the works of our hands will crumble? The Dúnedain were blessed with long life, with strength and wisdom beyond other men, but they were not spared this truth. Their ships sailed to the edges of the world. Their towers pierced the heavens. Yet they could not outrun the shadow of mortality. And in their yearning for immortality, they were not unlike us who stand in the twilight of our own days, seeking a light that endures. The early kings of Númenor, from Elros to Vardamir, ruled with a wisdom born of humility. They saw their role not as lords, but as caretakers of a sacred trust. They built havens like Romena, where ships could sail to Middle-earth, not to dominate, but to learn. They carved statues that seemed to breathe, wove tapestries that told of the world's beginning. In these acts they found a kind of eternity, not the eternity of the elves, but the eternity of legacy, of leaving a mark upon the world. Their halls echoed with songs of the Valar, of Eru, of the light that had been given. And yet even in these songs there was a note of sorrow, a faint discord that spoke of what could not be attained. For the elves who visited Númenor in those early days brought with them a light that was both a blessing and a burden. Their ships sailing from Tol Eressëa gleamed with a radiance that seemed to mock the mortality of men. The Eldar spoke of Valinor, of the undying lands where time did not wither and death held no dominion. And though they meant no harm, their words planted a seed in the hearts of the Númenorians, a seed of wonder, yes, but also of envy. Why must we die, they began to ask. Why must we fade when others endure? It was not yet rebellion, not yet defiance. It was a sorrow, a yearning, a crack in the foundation of their faith. Let us pause now in this moment before the storm to reflect on this sorrow. The sorrow of mortality is not a weakness, but a truth. It is the knowledge that our time is brief, that our steps are numbered, that the tale we weave will one day end. The elves undying knew a different sorrow, the sorrow of memory, of watching the world change while they remained. But for men the sorrow is sharper, for it is bound to the certainty of departure. The Númenorians in their early days turned this sorrow into beauty. They built ships that sailed beyond the horizon, halls that stood against the ages, stories that carried the weight of truth. In these acts they found meaning, if not immortality. Yet meaning, like reverence, can fade. As the centuries turned, the Númenorians grew proud. Their ships returned from Middle-earth laden with treasures, their halls filled with the spoils of distant lands. They were no longer seekers, but takers. Their kings, once shepherds of a sacred trust, began to see themselves as lords of the world. The white tree Nimloth stood silent, its leaves trembling in a wind that carried the first whispers of shadow. The songs of Eru grew faint, replaced by anthems of Númenor's might. And in this shift the light that was gifted began to dim, not because it was taken, but because it was forgotten. What is it to forget to turn from the light that was given to seek a light of one's own making? It is not a sudden act, not a single choice. It is a slow drift, a turning of the heart, a whisper that grows louder with each passing day. The Númenóreans did not cast aside their faith in a moment. They drifted as a ship might drift from its course, carried by currents unseen. Their eyes, once lifted to the stars, began to turn inward, to the works of their own hands. Their hearts, once open to the silence of Nimloth, began to fill with the noise of ambition. Let us stand now at the edge of Númenor's golden age and listen to the silence. The white tree still stands, its silver leaves catching the last light of a fading dawn. The towers of Armanelos gleam, but their light is colder now, more like steel than starlight. The ships of Númenor sail the seas, but their sails are heavy with pride. The kings still rule, but their wisdom is tempered by a growing restlessness. And in the hearts of the people, a question lingers: why must we die? This question is not yet a cry of defiance, but it is no longer a whisper. It is a tide rising slowly, carrying Númenor toward a horizon where the storm awaits. The tale of Númenor is not yet ended, but its song has begun to change. The light that was gifted still burns, but its flame is no longer steady. The silence of Nimloth grows heavier, as if the tree itself could sense the weight of what is to come. And we who listen to this tale are asked to ponder: what does it mean to hold a light not wrought by our own hands, to carry it faithfully even when the darkness calls? The answer lies not in the stars nor in the sea, but in the heart, where all tales begin and where all tales must end. For the light of Númenor was never theirs to own, but theirs to bear, and in that bearing they would find both their glory and their ruin. When does a heart turn from light to shadow? Not in a single moment, not with a cry that shatters the silence, but in the slow drift of a soul, in the quiet choices that gather like clouds before a storm. The tale of Númenor, that star-crowned isle, is no tale of sudden ruin. It is a song of whispers of questions unanswered, of a people who stood at the zenith of their glory and did not see the abyss yawning beneath their feet. In the golden halls of Armanelos, beneath the silver boughs of Nimloth, the white tree, a new voice began to speak, a voice not of the valor nor of Eru, but of a shadow older than the world. And in its words Númenor heard not only temptation, but the echo of its own unspoken desires. Let us return to the twilight of Númenor's golden age, where we left the Dunedain, those men of Westerness, standing at the edge of their greatness. Their ships sailed the wide seas, their towers pierced the heavens. Their wisdom rivaled that of the elves, yet in their hearts a restlessness stirred, a sorrow, born of mortality, a yearning for the undying life of the Eldar. The question that had once been a whisper, "Why must we die?" had grown louder, a tide rising in the souls of kings and commoners alike. The white tree stood silent, its leaves trembling in a wind that carried the scent of change, and the songs of Eru, once sung with reverence, grew faint, drowned by anthems of Númenor's might. In these years the kings of Númenor turned their eyes from the west, from the undying lands where the valor dwelt in eternal light. They looked instead to the east, to Middle-earth, where lands vast and untamed lay open to their ambition. Their ships, once vessels of exploration, became bearers of dominion. They built fortresses along the coasts, raised pillars to their own glory, and demanded tribute from the lesser men who dwelt in shadow. The Númenóreans, who had once sailed as seekers, now walked as lords, their hearts swelling with pride. They called themselves the kings of men, and in their halls the name of Eru was spoken less often, replaced by the clamor of their own deeds. Yet pride alone does not break a people. It is the voice that feeds pride, the whisper that turns a fleeting thought into a consuming fire. And into this moment of Númenor's unrest came a shadow clad in fair form, bearing a name that echoed with the weight of ancient malice. Sauron, the servant of Morgoth, the deceiver of old, came to Númenor not as a conqueror but as a captive. Let us pause here in the courts of Ar-pharazôn to behold this moment, for it is a pivot upon which the fate of a kingdom turned. Imagine the scene as the elves might weave it into their laments. A great host of Númenorian ships, their sails proud against the horizon, returning from Middle-earth. With a prize beyond reckoning, Sauron the Dark Lord, bound in chains of steel, his eyes gleaming with a light both terrible and beguiling. Ar-pharazôn, the Golden King, stood at the helm of this triumph, his heart ablaze with the glory of his victory. For he had marched into Middle-earth, had faced the might of Sauron's armies, and had brought the enemy to his knees, or so he believed. The Númenorians in their pride saw this as the pinnacle of their power, the subjugation of a being who had once served Morgoth, the dark god whose shadow had scarred the world. But Sauron was no mere prisoner. He was a Maya, a spirit of fire and cunning whose will had shaped rings of power and whose lies had toppled kingdoms. He came to Númenor not in defeat but in guile, his chains a mask, his captivity a strategy. And in the courts of Ar-pharazôn, where the white tree stood silent, he began to weave his spell, not with swords or sorcery but with words. Words are the subtlest of weapons, for they slip into the heart unnoticed planting seeds that grow in darkness. Sauron spoke not of conquest, but of greatness. He spoke not of rebellion, but of destiny. And the Númenorians, already restless, already questioning, listened. What is it to hear a whisper that speaks your own desires? It is to stand before a mirror that shows not your face, but your dreams, dreams you scarcely dared to name. Sauron did not come to Númenor preaching defiance of the valor. He came praising the Dúnedain, calling them a people unmatched, a race destined to rule not only Middle-earth, but the very heavens. You are the heirs of the world, he said, his voice smooth as starlight, sharp as a blade. Why should you bow to powers who withhold from you the gift of immortality? Why should you fade when you could endure? These were not new thoughts, not new questions. They were the questions that had stirred in Númenorian hearts for centuries, now given form, now given voice. Let us linger here in the shadow of Sauron's words to ponder their power. The human heart is a fragile thing, easily swayed by what it longs to hear. We, like the Númenorians, are not immune to whispers that promise more time, more power, more certainty. Sauron's genius was not in creating desire, but in amplifying it, in taking the sorrow of mortality and twisting it into a weapon. He did not force Númenor to turn from the light. He merely held up a mirror, and they saw what they wished to see, a people worthy of eternity, a kingdom that could rival Valinor itself. Ar-pharazôn, the Golden King, was the first to fall under this spell. He was a man of might, his name sung in halls. From Rhomenna to Pelargir, his ambition boundless. Yet beneath his strength lay a fear that all men know. Though few name it, the fear of death, the dread of fading into silence. Sauron saw this fear as a hunter sees the trembling of its prey, and he spoke to it. You are a king, he said, but what is a king whose reign must end? What is glory that crumbles to dust? The valor have denied you what is yours by right. They have given you long life, but not endless life. They have given you a land, but not the land where death is unknown. These words were not spoken in a single moment, but over years in quiet councils, in shadowed halls, in the silences where doubt takes root. Sauron, now no longer a prisoner, but a counselor, rose in the king's esteem. He walked the courts of Ar-pharazôn, his presence a strange blend of majesty and menace, his words a balm to the wounded pride of a king. And ar-pharazôn, who had once stood as a beacon of Númenor's might, began to dream of a greatness that would defy the very order of the world. But Sauron's whisper did not stop with the king. It spread like a mist over the land, seeping into the hearts of nobles and commoners alike. The Númenorians, who had once gathered beneath Nimloth to sing of Eru, now gathered in new temples built not to the one, but to the glory of men. Sauron, with cunning beyond mortal ken, introduced a new worship not openly of Morgoth, not yet, but of strength of power of the will to shape the world. He spoke of a lord of darkness, a giver of gifts, a power who could grant what the valor withheld. And though the name of Morgoth was not yet spoken, its shadow loomed a spectre waiting to be named. Let us pause now in the courts of Ar-Menellos to reflect on this turning. What is it to worship power, to turn from the silence of faith to the clamor of ambition? It is to seek a light of one's own making, to believe that the flame you forge can outshine the flame that was given. The Númenorians, in their pride, began to forget the silence of Nimloth, the stillness of the white tree that asked only for remembrance. They built altars to their own might, and in doing so they built altars to Sauron's lies. Yet not all were swayed. There were those among the Dunedain who heard Sauron's words and felt not desire but unease. They were called the faithful, the Elendili, those who clung to the old ways, to the worship of Eru, to the friendship of the elves. They gathered in secret in havens, like Romena, where the sea still sang of the west. They looked to the white tree and saw not a relic but a living bond to the light that had been gifted. Among them were lords like Amandil, father of Elendil, whose heart remained steadfast, whose eyes still turned to the undying lands with hope, not envy. The faithful were few, their voices drowned by the rising tide of pride. They walked among their kin, seeing the temples rise, hearing the songs change, and they knew that Númenor was drifting. They spoke of the valor of Eru, of the light that endures beyond death, but their words were met with scorn. Why cling to the past? The proud asked. Why bow to powers who deny us our due? The faithful had no answer that could pierce the veil of Sauron's lies, for truth is a quiet thing easily lost in the clamor of ambition. Let us stand now in the shadow of these new temples and ask, what is it to stand against a tide, to hold fast to a light when all around you seek another? The faithful were not heroes, not yet. They were simply men, frail and mortal, who chose to remember. Their faith was not a shield, but a burden, a weight that grew heavier with each passing day. Yet in their silence, in their refusal to bow, they carried a spark of the light that Númenor was forgetting. Sauron, with eyes that saw all, knew of the faithful. He did not strike them down, not yet, for his power lay in division, not destruction. He sowed discord, setting brother against brother, noble against noble, until Númenor was no longer one people, but two, the king's men, who followed ar-pharazôn and Sauron's vision of greatness, and the faithful who clung to the old ways. The white tree, once a symbol of unity, became a point of contention. To the king's men, it was a reminder of a past they wished to surpass. To the faithful, it was a beacon of hope, a promise that the light could endure. As the years passed, Sauron's influence grew. He counseled ar-pharazôn to build a great armada, to sail not to Middle-earth, but to the west, to the undying lands themselves. "Why should you not claim what is yours?" he whispered. "Why should you not take the immortality that the Valar hoard?" These were words of blasphemy, words that defied the will of Eru, yet they found fertile ground in a king consumed by fear and pride. Ar-pharazôn began to dream of a war against the gods, a conquest that would make him not merely a king, but a lord of eternity. Let us linger here in the gathering storm to ponder the nature of temptation. Temptation is not a thunderbolt, but a whisper. It does not demand. It suggests. It does not force. It invites. Sauron's power over Númenor was not in his strength, but in his patience, in his ability to speak what the heart already longed to hear. The Númenorians did not fall because they were weak, but because they were great, and yet blind to the truth. That greatness is a gift, not a right. The white tree still stood, its leaves catching the last light of a fading dawn. But the temples of Sauron rose higher, their altars stained with offerings to a darkness not yet named. The faithful watched and prayed and waited, knowing that the tide was rising. And in the heart of ar-pharazôn, the Golden King, a dream took root, a dream of immortality, of a throne that would never fade, of a Númenor that would outshine the stars. It was a dream born of Sauron's whisper, a dream that would lead not to glory but to ruin. So we stand at the edge of Númenor's twilight, listening to the whisper that grew. The light that was gifted flickers, the silence of Nimloth grows heavy, and the shadow of Sauron spreads like a veil over the land. The tale is not yet ended, but its song is now a lament, a warning of what comes when a people turn from stewardship to dominion. And we who hear this tale are asked to ponder, what does it mean to listen to a whisper that speaks our desires, to chase a light of our own making when the true light was given freely? The answer lies in the heart, where the battle between faith and pride is fought, and where the fate of Númenor was sealed. What does it mean to stand when all around you kneel, to hold fast to a light that others have forsaken, to sing a song that others have forgotten? In the tale of Númenor, that star-crowned isle, we find not only the shadow of pride, but the flicker of fidelity, a spark that burned in the hearts of those who refused to bow. The white tree Nimloth stood silent in the courts of ar-Menellos, its silver leaves trembling in a wind heavy with foreboding. The whisper of Sauron had grown to a roar, and the Dunedain, once a people united, were now divided, the king's men who dreamed of dominion and the faithful who clung to the memory of the light that was gifted. This is their story, a lament for the fallen, a hymn for those who endured, a meditation on the cost of faith in a world that turns from truth. Let us return to Númenor, where the twilight has deepened into dusk. The golden halls of ar-Menellos gleam no longer with the light of dawn, but with the cold fire of ambition. Ar-pharazôn, the Golden King, sits upon a throne of pride, his heart ensnared by Sauron's words. The Dark Lord, once a captive, now walks as a counselor, his voice a constant murmur in the king's ear, shaping dreams of immortality, of a Númenor that could defy the very gods. Temples rise across the land, their altars dedicated not to Eru, the One, but to a darkness veiled in promises of power. The name of Morgoth, Sauron's ancient master, is whispered in these shadowed halls, and the air grows heavy with the scent of sacrifice. Yet amidst this gathering storm, there are those who do not bend. The faithful, the Elendili, walk softly through the streets of Romena, their eyes turned to the sea, their hearts to the west. They are not many, but they are steadfast, their faith rooted in the old ways, the worship of Eru, the friendship of the elves, the sanctity of the white tree. They gather in secret in hidden groves and quiet havens to pray for a land that seems to have forgotten them. Their leader, Amandal, Lord of Andunia, is a man of quiet strength, his lineage tracing back to the house of Elros, his heart unswayed by the clamor of Sauron's lies. In his eyes burns a light not of pride but of hope, a hope that Númenor might yet be redeemed. Let us pause here in the shadow of these secret gatherings to ponder the nature of fidelity. What is it to remain true when truth is scorned, to stand in silence when the world demands your voice? The faithful were not warriors, not yet. They were simply men, frail and mortal, who chose to remember. Their faith was not a banner to be waved, but a burden to be carried, a weight that grew heavier with each passing day. They looked to Nimloth, its leaves still catching the fading light, and saw not a relic but a promise that the light of Eru could endure even in a land that turned to shadow. But fidelity is a lonely path, and the faithful walked it under a growing shadow. The king's men, led by ar-pharazôn and counseled by Sauron, grew bolder in their defiance. They no longer spoke of the Valar with reverence but with contempt. Why should we bow to powers who withhold immortality, they asked. Why should we fade when we could conquer death itself? Sauron fed these questions, his words like oil on a flame, and the Númenorians, once stewards of a sacred gift, began to dream of rebellion not against Middle-earth, but against the very order of the world. Ar-pharazôn, his fear of death now a consuming fire, listened as Sauron spoke of a war against the west, a conquest of Valinor, the undying lands where the gods dwelt in eternal light. This was no idle dream, but a blasphemy that shook the heavens. The Valar who had raised Númenor from the sea had forbidden men to set foot in Valinor, not out of cruelty but out of love, for the fate of men was not to dwell in unchanging eternity, but to seek meaning within the bounds of mortality. Yet Sauron twisted this truth, painting the Valar as tyrants, hoarders of a gift that Númenor deserved. "Take what is yours," he whispered to ar-pharazôn. "Sail to the west, claim the undying lands, and you shall be as gods." And the king, his heart hardened by pride, began to prepare a great armada, a fleet to challenge the powers of the world. Let us stand now on the shores of Romena, where the ships of Númenor are gathering. The sea is restless, its waves whispering of a storm to come. The faithful watch from the cliffs, their hearts heavy with foreboding. They see the sails rising, the forges blazing, the forests falling to build a fleet that would defy Eru's will. They hear the chants of the king's men songs, not of hope but of conquest. And they know that Númenor is no longer a land of light, but a land of shadow, its people driven by a dream that is not their own. Yet the faithful do not despair. They turn to Amandal, their lord, and he speaks to them of hope, not the hope of victory, but the hope of redemption. The light of Eru is not bound to this land, he says. It burns in the heart, in the memory of what was, in the promise of what may yet be. Amandal is no king, but his words carry the weight of one who has seen the truth. He tells of the white tree, of its roots that reach deep into the earth, of its leaves that still shine with the light of Telperion. As long as Nimloth stands, he says, there is hope. As long as we remember, there is a path back to the light. But Nimloth itself is now in peril. Sauron, with eyes that miss nothing, has seen the reverence the faithful hold for the white tree. He knows it is a symbol of the old ways, a reminder of the bond between Númenor and Valinor, and so he counsels ar-pharazôn to cast it down. "Why should you cling to a tree that speaks of servitude?" he asks. "Let it be a sign of your new dominion, a sacrifice to the power that will grant you eternity." The king, swayed by pride and fear, agrees, and the order is given. Nimloth, the white tree, is to be felled, its boughs burned in the temples of the new worship. Let us linger here in the courts of Armenelos, where the axe is raised against the sacred. The faithful hear of this decree, and their hearts break. For Nimloth is more than a tree, it is a living echo of the light that was gifted, a testament to the grace of Eru. Among them is Isildur, son of Elendil, grandson of Amandal, a young man whose name will one day echo through the ages. Isildur, moved by a courage born of faith, risks all to preserve the legacy of the white tree. Under cover of night, he steals into the courts past guards and shadows and takes a single fruit from Nimloth's boughs. The act is not without cost. Isildur is wounded, his blood a silent offering to the light he seeks to save. Yet the fruit is preserved, a seed of hope carried into the darkness. This act of Isildur is a spark in the gathering gloom, a reminder that even in the face of ruin, the light can endure. The fruit of Nimloth, hidden by the faithful, is a symbol of their defiance, not a defiance of arms, but of memory. They know that Númenor is falling, that the armada of ar-pharazôn will sail to its doom. Yet they cling to the hope that something of the light can be saved, that the legacy of the Dunedain can endure beyond the cataclysm. Let us reflect now on the courage of the faithful. Courage is not always a shout, a sword raised against the foe. Sometimes it is a whisper, a quiet act of preservation, a refusal to let the light be extinguished. Isildur's theft of the fruit, Amandil's words of hope, the secret prayers of the Elendili. These are not the deeds of heroes in the songs of old. but the deeds of men who chose to stand when all around them knelt. Their courage was not born of certainty, but of faith, a faith that the light of Eru was greater than the shadow of Sauron. Yet the shadow grows darker. The felling of Nimloth is a wound that cannot be undone. The white tree, once a beacon of unity, is cast into the flames, its silver leaves consumed by the fires of Sauron's temples. The smoke rises over Armanelos, a dark omen that chokes the air. The faithful weep, for they know that this is no mere act of destruction, but a rejection of the light that was gifted. The king's men rejoice, seeing in the flames a sign of their new dominion. And Sauron, standing in the shadows, smiles, for he knows that Númenor has crossed a threshold from which there is no return. Ar-pharazôn, now wholly under Sauron's sway, presses forward with his plan. The armada grows, its ships numbering in the thousands, their sails blotting out the sun. The forges of Númenor burn day and night, crafting weapons for a war against the gods. The people, caught in the fervor of their king's ambition, chant his name, believing that he will lead them to immortality. Yet there is a hollowness in their cries, a fear that lingers beneath their pride. For what is it to challenge the order of the world, to sail against the will of Eru? The Númenorians, in their blindness, do not see the abyss that awaits, but the faithful see it, and their hearts are heavy with grief. Amandel, knowing that the end is near, takes a final act of faith. He gathers his son Elendil and a small band of the faithful, and they sail westward, not to conquer but to plead. Amandel's ship is a small thing, a fragile vessel against the might of the sea, yet it carries the weight of Númenor's hope. He seeks the valor to beg forgiveness for his people, to ask that the light might not be wholly extinguished. I go to the west, he says to Elendil, not for myself, but for the sake of those who may yet be saved. His fate is unknown, his ship lost to the mists of legend, but his act is a testament to the power of faith, a faith that seeks not reward but redemption. Let us stand now on the shores of Númenor as Amandel's ship fades into the horizon. The armada of ar-pharazôn is nearly ready, its sails a dark tide against the sea. The faithful, led by Elendil, prepare their own ships, not for war but for flight. They know that Númenor cannot be saved, that the wrath of Eru is coming. Yet they do not despair, for they carry the fruit of Nimloth, the memory of the light, the hope of a new beginning. They are the remnant, the keepers of the flame, the ones who will carry the legacy of the Dúnedain into the darkness. The tale of Númenor is now a dirge, its song heavy with the weight of loss. The white tree is gone, its ashes scattered, its silence broken. The armada of ar-pharazôn stands ready to sail, a blasphemy that will shake the foundations of the world. And the faithful, few and frail, stand against the tide, their hearts burning with a light that refuses to fade. We who hear this tale are asked to ponder, what does decided to stand when all around you kneel, to carry a light that others have forsaken even when the shadow falls? The answer lies in the heart where faith and fear contend, and where the fate of Númenor was written not in the stars, but in the choices of men. What does it mean to defy the song of creation, to raise a hand against the heavens, to demand eternity from a world shaped for passing? The tale of Númenor, that star-crowned isle, is no longer a song of glory, nor even a lament of division, but a requiem, a cry that echoes in the deeps where light and shadow meet. The white tree Nimloth is gone, its ashes scattered, its silence broken by the clamor of pride. Ar-pharazôn, the Golden King, stands at the helm of a great armada, his heart ablaze with a dream forged in Sauron's lies, to conquer the undying lands, to seize immortality, to become as gods. Yet the sea is restless, the stars are veiled, and the faithful, those few who still cling to the light of Eru, watch from their fragile ships, knowing that the wrath of the One is near. This is the hour of Númenor's fall, when the whisper of Sauron became a storm, and the world was changed forever. Let us stand now on the shores of Númenor, where the great armada gathers like a tide of iron and fire. The sails of ar-pharazôn's fleet stretch across the horizon, a dark canopy that swallows the sun. The forges of Ravenna blaze without cease, their smoke rising like a shroud over the land. The king's men, driven by the fervor of their king's ambition, chant his name, their voices a thunder that drowns the whispers of the sea. They believe they sail to glory, to a victory that will make them lords of eternity. Yet there is a hollowness in their cries, a fear that lingers beneath their pride, for even in their blindness they sense the weight of what they dare. Ar-pharazôn, clad in gold, stands upon the prow of his flagship, his eyes fixed on the west. Sauron the Deceiver stands at his side, his smile a blade hidden in shadow. The Dark Lord's work is nearly done, for he knows that this armada, this blasphemy, will not bring Númenor to greatness, but to ruin. His whisper has become a chain binding the king to a dream that is not his own. Sail to Valinor, Sauron has said, and take what the Valar have denied you. The undying lands are yours by right, and none can stand against the might of Númenor. These words, spoken over years in the shadowed halls of Armenelos, have taken root, and now they bear fruit, a fruit bitter and deadly, a harvest of hubris that will drown a kingdom. Let us pause here in the gathering storm to ponder the nature of defiance. To defy the will of Eru is not merely to rebel, but to unmake, to tear at the fabric of the world's song, to silence the harmony that binds light to shadow, life to death. The Númenorians, in their pride, believe they can reshape the order of creation, that they can seize what was never meant for them. Yet creation is not a thing to be grasped, but a gift to be received. The Valar, who raised Númenor from the sea, forbade men to set foot in Valinor, not out of envy, but out of wisdom, for the fate of men is to seek meaning within the bounds of mortality, not to dwell in unchanging eternity. Ar-pharazôn, blinded by Sauron's lies, sees this not as wisdom but as tyranny, and so he sails to challenge the gods. The armada moves a tide of steel and ambition, cutting through the sea like a blade. The faithful, led by Elendil, watch from their own ships, small and scattered, anchored in the havens of Ravenna. They carry the fruit of Nimloth, the seed of the white tree, a fragile hope preserved by Isildur's courage. They know that Númenor is doomed, that the armada will not return in triumph. Yet they do not flee, not yet. They wait. Their eyes turn to the west, their prayers rising like smoke to Eru, the one whose will is both justice and mercy. Elendil, tall and resolute, stands among them, his heart heavy with the loss of his father Amandil, who sailed to plead with the Valar and was lost to the mists. The light endures, Elendil says to his sons Isildur and Anarion. Though Númenor falls, the light will not fail. Let us linger now on the cliffs of Ravenna, where the faithful stand in silence. The sea is a mirror reflecting the veiled stars, and the air is thick with the weight of what is to come. The faithful are not many, but they are steadfast, their faith a flame that burns in the darkness. They are the remnant, the keepers of the light that Númenor has forsaken. They carry the memory of the white tree, the songs of Eru, the friendship of the elves. And though their hearts are heavy with grief, they do not despair, for they know that hope is not bound to the fate of a single land. The armada of ar-pharazôn reaches the shores of Aman, the blessed realm, where the Valar dwell in light eternal. The beaches of Valinor gleam like pearls, the mountains of the Pelori rise like a wall of starlight, and the air sings with the memory of the two trees. The Númenorians, stepping onto this sacred shore, feel a moment of awe, a flicker of doubt. But ar-pharazôn, spurred by Sauron's whisper and his own fear of death, presses forward his army, spreading across the land like a stain. They believe they can conquer the gods, that their swords can claim immortality. Yet the Valar do not meet them with swords or spears. They lay down their guardianship of the world, and call upon Eru, the one whose will is the foundation of all things. And Eru answers, "Let us stand now in the moment when the world breaks. The sky splits, the sea roars, and the earth trembles as the wrath of Ilúvatar descends. The armada of ar-pharazôn is swallowed by a chasm that opens in the land, a wound in the heart of Aman. The king and his army are buried not in glory, but in darkness, their dream of immortality crushed beneath the weight of divine justice. But the wrath of Eru does not end with the invaders. The sea rises a great wave that reaches across the world, and Númenor, the star-crowned isle, is its target. Imagine it now as the elves might sing in their halls of sorrow, the waves towering like mountains, their crests crowned with foam and fire. The towers of Armanelos crumble, the halls of the kings are swept away, the temples of Sauron's worship are drowned in the deeps. The people of Númenor, those who chanted ar-pharazôn's name and those who stood silent, are caught in the deluge, their cries lost in the roar of the sea. The land that was a gift raised by the valor is unmade by the will of Eru, sinking beneath the waves, its light extinguished, its song silenced. Númenor, the westerness, becomes a memory, a legend, a wound in the heart of the world. Yet even in this cataclysm there is mercy. The faithful, led by Elendil, are spared. Their ships, frail against the might of the sea, are borne up by the winds of Eru's grace. The waves that destroy Númenor carry the faithful to Middle-earth, to the shores of a world scarred but enduring. They land in the realms that will become Gondor and Arnor, carrying with them the fruit of Nimloth, the memory of the light, the hope of a new beginning. Elendil, standing on the shores of Middle-earth, looks back to the west where Númenor once shone, and he weeps not for the land but for the people, for the choices that led to ruin. Let us pause here in the aftermath of the deluge to reflect on the nature of wrath and mercy. The fall of Númenor is not a tale of vengeance, but of consequence. Eru, the one, does not destroy out of anger, but out of justice, for to defy the song of creation is to invite its unmaking. Yet even in justice there is mercy, for the faithful are spared their faith, rewarded not with triumph, but with survival. The fruit of Nimloth, carried by Isildur, is a testament to this mercy, a seed that will grow into the white tree of Gondor, a symbol that the light endures even in exile. Sauron the Deceiver is not spared the cataclysm, yet he is not destroyed. His spirit, bound to the malice of his will, flees the drowning of Númenor and returns to Middle-earth, to Mordor, where he will forge new plans, new rings, new shadows. His laughter echoes in the deeps, for though his body is lost, his purpose is fulfilled. Númenor, the greatest kingdom of men, lies beneath the sea, a monument to his cunning. Yet even Sauron cannot see the spark carried by the faithful, the light that will one day challenge his dominion. Let us linger now on the shores of Middle-earth, where the faithful stand as exiles. The sea is calm now, its wrath spent, but the stars are hidden, as if in mourning. Elendil and his sons Isildur and Anarion look to the future, to the realms they will build, to the legacy they will carry. They are not kings, not yet, but stewards of a light that was gifted, keepers of a hope that was preserved. The fruit of Nimloth is planted in the soil of Middle-earth, a promise that the light of Eru will bloom again, though the cost has been great. What is it then to lose a world, to see the land of your birth, the works of your hands, the dreams of your heart swallowed by the sea? For the faithful, the fall of Númenor is not merely a loss, but a wound that will shape their descendants from the kings of Gondor to the rangers of the north. Yet it is also a beginning, a chance to rebuild, to remember, to carry the light forward. The Dúnedain in their exile become not conquerors, but guardians their lives, a testament to the truth that the light endures even when the star falls. The tale of Númenor's fall is a mirror reflecting the fragility of human ambition, the weight of divine justice, the power of steadfast faith. The sea that swallowed the star was not merely a punishment, but a cleansing, a reminder that the world is not ours to own but to steward. The faithful, though few, carry this truth in their hearts, their ships a bridge between the past and the future. And we who hear this tale are asked to ponder, what does it mean to defy the song of creation, to chase a dream that leads to ruin when the true light was given freely? The answer lies not in the waves nor in the stars, but in the heart, where the choices of men are made and where the fate of Númenor was sealed. What does it mean to carry a light through the dark, to hold a flame kindled by another, to guard it against the wind, to bear it into a world that knows only shadow? The tale of Númenor, that star-crowned isle, has sunk beneath the waves. Its towers drowned its songs, silenced its pride, swallowed by the sea. Yet the story does not end in ruin, for from the ashes of a fallen kingdom rises a spark carried by the faithful, those who refused to bow, who clung to the memory of the light that was gifted. In the lands of Middle-earth, where the sea meets the shore, the Dúnedain stand as exiles, their hearts heavy with loss, their hands holding a seed of hope. This is their legacy, a song not of triumph but of endurance, a hymn that fades into the silence of eternity, asking us to ponder the weight of the light we carry. Let us stand now on the shores of Middle-earth, where the waves still whisper of Númenor's fall. The sky is heavy, the stars veiled, as if in mourning for a land that was once a beacon. Elendil, tall and resolute, stands among the faithful, his sons, Isildur and Anarion, at his side. Their ships, spared by the mercy of Eru, have carried them from the cataclysm, from the sea that swallowed the star. They are few, their possessions scant, their future uncertain. Yet they carry a treasure beyond gold or steel, the fruit of Nimloth, the white tree, preserved by Isildur's courage, a living echo of the light that shone in Númenor's dawn. This fruit, this seed, is more than a relic. It is a promise, a testament that the light of Eru endures even in exile. The faithful are no longer lords of a great isle, no longer kings of a golden city. They are wanderers, their feet treading the soil of a world scarred by war and shadow. Middle-earth is not Númenor. Its hills are wild, its forests deep, its peoples divided. The men of these lands know little of the valor less of Eru, and the shadow of Sauron who fled. The drowning of Númenor grows once more in the east. Yet Elendil does not despair. He looks to the west, where Númenor once shone, and he sees not only loss, but purpose. "We are not cast out," he says to his people, "but sent. The light we carry is not ours to hoard, but to share. Let us build anew, not for glory, but for grace. Let us walk with the faithful as they turn from the sea and journey inland, their hearts guided by a memory that burns brighter than sorrow." Elendil leads them to the north, where the rivers sing and the mountains stand like sentinels. There, in a land of rolling hills and ancient stones, he founds the kingdom of Arnor, a realm to guard the light of the Dúnedain. Isildur and Anarion, his sons, travel south to the great river Anduin, where they raise the towers of Gondor, a stronghold against the shadow. These are not kingdoms of conquest, but of stewardship, built not to rival the glory of Númenor, but to preserve its truth. The faithful plant the fruit of Nimloth in the courts of Minas, Isildur's city, and from it grows a new white tree, its silver leaves catching the light of dawn, a symbol that the light endures. Imagine it now as the elves might sing in their halls of starlight. The white tree standing in a city of stone, its roots deep in the earth, its boughs reaching for the heavens. The men of Gondor gather beneath it, not to worship their own might, but to remember the grace that brought them through the dark. The Dúnedain, though exiles, are not broken. They build cities that gleam like beacons, Minas Anor, the tower of the sun, Minas Ithil, the tower of the moon, Osgiliath, the citadel of stars. They forge alliances with the elves, with Gil-galad and Elrond, who know the cost of standing against the shadow. They craft blades that shine with the memory of Númenor's forges, weave tapestries that tell of the sea, and the stars sing songs that carry the weight of their loss. Yet the legacy of Númenor is not only in stone or song, but in the heart. The faithful in their exile become guardians, not lords. They do not seek to dominate Middle-earth, but to protect it, to hold back the shadow that grows in Mordor, where Sauron rebuilds his power. Elendil now, High King of Arnor and Gondor, is no ar-pharazôn, driven by pride and fear. He is a steward of the light, his crown a burden, not a prize. His sons, Isildur and Anarion, carry this same burden, their lives shaped by the memory of a kingdom lost, their eyes fixed on a future they may not see. The Dúnedain in their new realms are not the conquerors of old, but a people tempered by sorrow, their greatness measured not in power, but in faith. Let us pause here in the courts of Gondor, where the white tree stands, to ponder the nature of legacy. What is it to carry the light of a fallen world, to build anew, not to erase the past, but to honor it? The faithful do not forget Númenor. They carry its memory in their songs, in their stories, in the names they give their cities. They speak of Armenelos, of the white tree of the kings who sailed to their doom. But they speak also of Amandil, who sailed to plead for mercy, of Isildur, who preserved the fruit, of Eru, whose wrath was tempered by grace. Their legacy is not one of glory, but of endurance, a testament to the truth that the light can survive the darkest storm. Yet the shadow of Númenor's fall lingers. The Dúnedain, though faithful, are men, and the heart of man is ever restless. The kingdoms of Arnor and Gondor, though founded in hope, will face trials of their own. The white tree, though planted anew, will one day wither, its leaves falling in a world that forgets. Sauron the deceiver watches from Mordor, his malice unbroken, his rings of power a new snare for the hearts of men. The legacy of Númenor is not a shield against the shadow, but a flame that must be guarded, a light that must be carried through the ages, from Elendil to Aragorn, from the Second Age to the Third. Let us linger now in the twilight of this new beginning to reflect on the cost of exile. To lose a homeland is to lose a part of the soul, to walk forever with a wound that does not heal. The faithful standing in Middle-earth are not spared this wound. They dream of Númenor, of its emerald hills and silver shores, of a time when the white tree stood in Armenelos, and the songs of Eru filled the air. Yet they do not cling to these dreams as a chain, but as a guide. They know that Númenor was a gift, not a right, and that its fall was a lesson, not a curse. Their exile is not a punishment, but a calling to carry the light forward, to share it with a world that hungers for hope. The white tree, standing in Minas Ithil, is a symbol of this calling. Its roots reach deep, drawing strength from the earth, just as the faithful draw strength from their faith. Its leaves, silver in the dawn, speak of a light that is not their own, but given a light that shines not for their glory, but for the world's. The Dúnedain, in their new kingdoms, become a people of memory, their lives a bridge between the past and the future. They are the heirs of Númenor, not in its pride, but in its promise, their hands holding a seed that will bloom long after they are gone. Let us walk now through the streets of Osgiliath, where the stars reflect in the waters of the Anduin. The faithful are building not for themselves, but for those who will come after. They raise towers to watch the east, where Sauron's shadow grows. They forge alliances with the elves, knowing that the fight against the Dark Lord is not theirs alone. They teach their children the songs of Eru, the tales of the valor, the truth of the light that was gifted. And though they know that their kingdoms will face trials, that the shadow will test their resolve, they do not falter, for they have seen the sea swallow a star and yet lived to see the dawn. What is it then to be an exile, to carry a light that others have forsaken, to build a home in a land not your own? It is to live with loss, yet not be defined by it. It is to hold a flame that burns with the memory of what was yet shines for what may be. The faithful in their new realms are not spared the sorrows of men, the fear of death, the temptation of power, the weight of time, yet they choose to carry the light, to guard it against the shadow, to pass it to those who will follow. Their legacy is not in the towers they build, but in the hope they preserve, a hope that will burn through the ages, from the white tree of Gondor to the reforged sword of Aragorn. Let us stand now in the shadow of the white tree and ask, what does it mean to carry a light through the dark? The tale of Númenor is a mirror reflecting the frailty of human ambition, the weight of divine justice, the power of steadfast faith. The fall of the star-crowned isle was not the end, but a turning, a moment when the light was tested and found enduring. The faithful, though few, carried this light to Middle-earth, planting it in the soil of a new world, singing it in the songs of a new age. Their story is not one of resolution, but of revelation, a revelation that the light we carry is not ours to own, but to bear a flame that shines not for our glory, but for the world's redemption. The sea that swallowed Númenor is silent now, its waves a distant memory. The stars shine once more, their light falling on the towers of Gondor, the hills of Arnor, the leaves of the white tree. The Dúnedain exiles and guardians walk the paths of Middle-earth, their hearts heavy with the past, their eyes fixed on the future. And we who hear their tale are left with a question that lingers like a song. What does it mean to hold a light not wrought by our hands, to carry it faithfully, even when the shadow calls? The answer lies not in the stars nor in the sea, but in the heart where the choices of men are made, where the legacy of Númenor endures, and where the light once gifted burns forever.